AITA for taking back our groceries that my wife gave to her sister. I am not op. Original posted on November 15, 2022 by UKPTYYC. AITA for taking back our groceries that my wife gave to her sister. My wife, 30. Wife has a younger sister, 28, with 4 kids. My sil is a married Som and her husband, 31, works 35 hours per week. Money is tight for them, but they still go on annual vacations, drive newer cars, etc. My wife and I keep separate finances except for a joint credit card and household bill. I also do most of the grocery shopping. This is relevant for later. A couple years ago, I found out my wife had been buying groceries for my sil on our joint card. About $150 $200 per month for a few months. She said that her sister had come to her saying they were tight on money and that she needed help feeding their kids. This about a month after they had got back from their most recent vacation in Mexico. I told my wife in no uncertain terms that I am not supporting their family. She argued with me saying that we could more than afford it. I replied that I don't care if she wanted to support them, but that's her business. My wife stopped buying them groceries on our joint card after, but I'm sure she told her sister because Sil has been standoffish since. In the last few months, grocery costs have been increasing thanks to inflation. As a cost-saving measure, I bought a whole cow for about $4,000, which works out to about $9 per pound and will last us more than a year. And my wife and I split the cost. Yesterday I went to the freezer to pull some steaks and saw the amount of beef was visibly lower. I checked our security cameras and saw my wife leaving the house with a big box. I texted her demanding to know if she had taken a bunch of our meat to Sil. And she replied yes. I grabbed Sil's keys. We have a copy. Drove to their house. Knocked on her door, and when Sil answered I told her that and I was taking back what my wife brought over. Sil protested saying I was taking food out of her kids' mouths. But I said I don't care. She already had one roast in the oven. I went to their freezer and they had about 4,050 pounds of ground beef, steaks, and roasts from our cow, including a couple prime rib roasts. I grabbed it all except the roast in the oven and drove home. My wife yelled at me saying she couldn't believe how selfish I was and that Sil called her crying. She also said that she paid for half of it and so she could do whatever she liked with it. I yelled back saying you don't get to decide to give away anything that we pay for together, and said she acted like a sneak thief for doing it behind my back. My wife is still angry at me and says until I apologize to her sister, return the meat that I took back, and apologize for calling her a thief, she won't speak to me. I may be the asshole because my wife pays half the groceries. Verdict. NTA. Update in the same post. Thanks for all the comments, suggestions, criticisms regardless of the vote. Consensus is my reaction and behavior was suboptimal, which I agree it was. I apologized to my wife for calling her a thief, and that I would apologize to her sister for going over to her house in a huff and upsetting her, but said I won't apologize for taking back the meat which we paid for jointly. I laid it all out and said my position on me not buying groceries for their family hadn't changed. I said her husband only works 3 days a week, 12-hour shifts, and if they're struggling for food he needs to pick up more shifts. I also said taking vacations and having new cars is a luxury they can't afford if I have to pitch in to pay for their food, as some of you suggested. I asked my wife why aren't you buying groceries with your own money if you want to support them. My wife responded she's been buying them groceries for the past couple years with her own money, because they're up to their eyeballs in loans and credit card debt. But inflation means their groceries have been costing her more and more. She then admitted to putting some things on our joint credit card in the last few months in smaller amounts than 2 years ago, so I wouldn't notice. As for the beef, Sil called her this past weekend crying, saying they needed help to the end of the month with food, because one of the kids broke their iPad, which they used to keep the kids entertained, and so they replaced it. She didn't ask me about taking them beef because she knew I would say no if she told me about the iPad, and didn't think I would notice since we have so much beef. She said I have no idea how hard it is to raise 4 kids and they need the iPad. I told her we need to go see a counselor because we're on different planets if she thinks an iPad is a necessity. So yeah, we're going to do therapy. Until then I'm sleeping in the basement. Answers to common questions. Why doesn't Sil's husband work more or Sil get a job? He does shift work 3 days a week. 12-hour shifts. He likes it because it frees him up to spend more time with the kids. Sil has never had a job beyond serving as a teenager. Why don't you put a lock on your freezer? I would like to stay married, and I'm certain if I did this, I wouldn't be married for very long. Did Sil and her husband pay for their vacations and cars themselves? I still don't know, but my guess would be credit cards and car loans if they're up to their eyeballs in debt, as my wife said. Why don't you compromise on helping them? A fair compromise to me, if I were to pitch in, would be for them to better manage their money, i.e., not going on annual vacations to Mexico. The last time I raised that, my wife said I was being judgmental. Maybe I'll propose it again in counseling. What OOP's wife doesn't seem to understand is that she isn't helping her sister pay for food and necessities. She's helping her sister pay for multiple new cars and tropical vacations and other luxuries. I don't quite get how she doesn't see that. If she wasn't subsidizing her sister's family with all that cash, they would have to spend the new car money on food instead. You're being judgmental. Yes, exactly. He's judging them on their inability to manage their money because they keep leeching off of his. And he's right to do so. When I was married, my Sil had a new house, 2 new cars, a boat, jet ski, vacations, etc., etc., etc. I was working 2 full-time jobs and we were eating spaghetti, and I drove a 12-yo car. My Sil didn't work and husband was a U.S. Marshal. I just assumed he was making $100,000 plus a year. Come to find out, he was making $59,000, $62K. Sil mom was giving the family $5,000 a month for food and clothes for years. People suck. If they were legitimately struggling, they would easily qualify for EBT, especially since they have 4 kids. So either these people truly are just throwing around a ton of money on unnecessary luxuries, or refuse to sign up for EBT because of appearances but are just fine manipulating family to pay for their groceries. Either way, OP's wife enabling this nonsense has gone on far too long. I have a feeling counseling isn't going to help much. Sadly, this isn't going to end in anything but divorce if his wife doesn't pull her head out of her ass and cut her sister out. Vacations to Mexico when you can't afford to feed the kids is disgusting. This one grinded my gears because clearly Sil and her husband's priorities are in the wrong place and are mucking up OOP's relationships with his wife. If you give away a prime rib I helped pay for, best believe I'm driving to take it back. I don't know if this is salvageable unless wife gets her head straightened out. An iPad isn't a need to keep her kids entertained. It's a want. Go to the library and have them start reading books instead of playing games. Buy a few cheap puzzles. Go to the park. Also, stop going on vacation and buying expensive toys, and you might be able to make it to the end of the month. If he wants to work 36 hours a week, Then they need a budget that lets them do that without having to run crying to her older sister to bail them out. I'm wondering if baby sister is the golden child and wife is used to enabling her. I understand OOP's issue with the groceries, though he handled it badly. But there are some big red flags in his marriage I'd be more concerned about. I saw the original and was completely baffled by the YTA comments. Op's wife is being used and manipulated, and she's been stealing or at least committing fraud for the last few years by adding groceries to the joint account. She knew she was wrong or she wouldn't have hid it. Why should Op support a whole other family? They chose to have kids and are continually choosing to live above their means. Op made it known he wouldn't be a doormat or an ATM for their family. How TF is an iPad a necessity? Why is he the one sleeping in the basement? I don't think I like anyone involved in this story. But I too have in-laws who do things they can't afford. They're frustrating ASF to listen to. Thank God they're out of our lives. Oop should cut his losses. His wife to me seems like a lost cause. At least the two of them don't have any children. I'm sorry, but if you have 4 kids that's fine, but you gotta sacrifice more time and money. Not rocket science. Oh God. Sil and her husband are the broke people who pretend they have the means to live in luxury. They're the people carrying around an empty LV bag. The sister is a user. The wife is an idiot, and Op, despite not being wrong, was extremely petty in his reaction. Everyone here is a disaster. My Sil is a married Som. One of the kids broke their iPad, which they used to keep the kids entertained, and so they replaced it. Why doesn't Sil husband work more or Sil get a job? He does shift work 3 days a week. 12-hour shifts. He likes it because it frees him up to spend more time with the kids. These people have the luxury of being with their kids, but they need to replace an iPad to keep their kids entertained? That makes no sense. Sil needs to go to food banks if she needs food. Wife needs to stop supporting irresponsible family members. OOP's wife and in-laws have serious priority issues. If Sil thinks it's too hard being a Som, then she either needs to stop having kids or get a job. You can't rely on electronics to raise your kids and handouts to feed them. You certainly can't take lavish trips in new cars and then cry poor. I'm a single mom. Work 12 hours night shifts. While 3 shifts per week is considered full-time, it's not enough for me to pay everything. Especially with prices on everything going up. I've been working 4 shifts per week for the last 2 years. I've decided I'd like to finally take my kids on vacation this summer, so guess what? Now I'm working 5 shifts per week to save up enough to pay for it. You do what you have to do to take care of business. If you can't afford a new car, you don't buy one. Kids don't need an iPad for entertainment. And quite honestly, if you can't afford steak, you buy chicken and hamburger. It is indeed hard to be a parent, and it is indeed not easy to raise 4 children. But saying an iPad is necessary because of it is nowhere close to the truth. I do not understand the sister's thought process. Beyond she wants to live life the way she wants regardless of circumstances. NTA, but the problem is that OP's wife is now lying to him or trying to conceal her spending on her sister's family. This is a very serious communication issue, and if Op wants to stay married, he has to address it in therapy. BTW, the Sil and husband are taking advantage of your wife. First off, don't have 4 children if you can't afford them. Second, she should get a job, just like other mothers do. Third, if they can afford new cars and vacations and an iPad, they can afford food. That reaction was a lot, but he's probably been putting up with their BS for a while. I'm just really confused as to why the Sil can't get a job. Something part-time when her husband gets home. Something WFH. Or something on the weekends so she doesn't have to worry about childcare. Just 36 hours a week to pay for the expenses of 6 people is not enough.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.